Have a look at these photos and tell me what camera these photos have been taken on. And well, they are taken on a Sony a7R5, a 61 megapixel full frame camera, probably about the best technical image quality on the market. But actually I lied because... What software update? Nah, fuck the software update. Sorry. But actually I lied because all of these photos were taken on this little guy here. The DJI Osmo Pocket 3, tiny camera, tiny sensor, 8 megapixels of resolution, I think. And it's not even a camera that's specifically designed to be photographed with. But in today's video, we're going to talk about the myth of technical image quality, why people obsess about it, and why, in most cases, it does not actually improve your photos. So, let's get into it. Ow. So first of all, let's actually compare image quality. And for this, I'm going to use DP Review and more specifically the studio shot comparison scene because it's very, very elaborate. It has all the cameras and it allows you to compare all the sensor outputs of basically all the cameras on the market. Let's first compare sharpness, and we're comparing medium format, full frame, APS-C and Micro Four Thirds sensors here. And as we can see, all four deliver very good detail. You could say that medium format and full frame look slightly sharper due to the higher resolution and contrast out of camera, but for 99% of photography, these differences are negligible. Next, let's compare high ISO performance at ISO 6400. And now again, we could go in and rank these outputs from best to worst, or alternatively, I might look at them differently. Consider that we need to watch them side by side to see the difference, argue that 6400 is an extreme value that I never actually have to use, and consider that the magnification here is extreme. This is not 200%, this is not 400%, this is not 800%, but probably something like 1600% magnification. Regarding dynamic range, we see similar patterns. Considering these files were underexposed by 6 stops, then brought up in post, all cameras provide surprisingly usable results despite the arguably unpractical magnification of these crops. And just for reference, I actually recently took a photo on the DJI Osmo Pocket that was super underexposed. I had no clue what was in the shadows and I was like, damn it, tiny 1-inch sensor. That file is lost. And I was actually super surprised by the dynamic range and the fact that I could literally pull out every detail in the shadow despite the image being so underexposed. So even really, really small sensors these days have a super good dynamic range. Additionally, people also choose bigger sensors for more background blur. And at the same settings, larger sensors do produce more background blur. But blur also depends on focal length. The longer the focal length, the blurrier your background, and aperture. The wider the aperture, the blurrier your background. So in practice, the relation between background blur and sensor size becomes a bit of a slippery slope, and even pros can't tell for sure what sensor was used to produce the photos that you're seeing right now. Given how similar these results are and that we need to push all of these sensors to the absolute limits, that we even still need to have them side by side and magnify at 1600% to really clearly perceive the difference, why do we give a fuzz about technical image quality? And I'm not claiming to have the all-encompassing answer why people care about technical image quality, but here is at least the 3 theories that I found the most appealing. And the first explanation why we care about gear is because it's easy. Photography is hard, based on a lot of practice, and in many instances it's still super subjective. Our brains try to rationalize photography by gripping onto the things that can clearly be ranked into categories from better to worse, which for photography can be hard, but for gear, you can exactly do that. It's easy to argue that a bigger sensor gives you better low-light performance than a small sensor, or that a brighter lens gives you more background separation than a darker lens. Which leads me to explanation number 2 why gear is so appealing, which is that focusing on gear is convenient. You can literally watch gear reviews or dynamic range charts from your couch and experiment with your new gear by taking photos of your cat. Photography, on the other hand, is hard. it requires a lot of time, a lot of discipline, and your first 10,000 photos might not even lead to tangible improvements. So we tend to take a grip on the aspects of photography that appear easier and more convenient, which more often than not is to care about gear and technical image quality rather than to actually go out and do photography. An additional explanation is marketing pressure, because there are super powerful actors on the market, most notably camera and lens manufacturers, who want you to believe that you need the latest and greatest in order to succeed at photography. Camera manufacturers need to sell cameras, and that's every year. So every new model that comes out, they need to justify why you absolutely need to upgrade your camera again. So the camera that's filming me right now is an X-T5, and I upgraded to an X-T5 coming from an X-T2. And yeah, Fujifilm got me with their marketing, making me believe that this 40 megapixel sensor is really going to provide me the best resolution and much better resolution than my old X-T2, and that the slight dynamic range gain on the X-T5 will actually be worth it. But in reality, the differences were relatively minor. But since camera manufacturers have become really, really good at marketing, they are really, really good at convincing people that they need the latest and greatest, even though the differences are usually relatively negligible. And I could now say that, oh yeah, it's the camera manufacturers that are to blame, but in reality, it's not only the camera manufacturers, but also YouTubers like me who collaborate with camera manufacturers, review their most recent gear, and therefore make people believe that they need to have the latest and greatest because the influencers or the people that many photographers look up to also own the latest and greatest gear. And then it becomes very easy to just make this correlation between great photos, because they produce something great, and great gear, and that you need to have the great gear in order to take the great photos. And given the amount of money that can be made by reviewing products, collaborating with different camera manufacturers, and also using affiliate links to earn money, of course there will be many photographers who do gear tutorial and gear reviews on their channels. And I don't know what your YouTube feed looks like, but there was a time where my YouTube feed looked like 80% gear-related photography videos and 20% what photography actually is, which is composition, reading the light, and how to edit your photos more effectively. And when you have a feed that gives you the impression that photography is to 60 to 80% about the gear, well, then that of course also influences you into believing that gear matters and that you need to have the latest and greatest and the best image quality to take great photos. And then the final reason why we care about gear is because we always want to explore something new. I'm not philosophical enough to argue that we humans are inherently materialistic, but I can speak from my own experience that I'm always excited to buy a new piece of gear. But from a practical point of view, the reason why we upgrade in the past 10 years has never really been the image quality gains. It's mostly about us just wanting to try something else, something new, something different that we haven't had so far. But since we have to justify to ourselves and to others why we made this gear purchase, then we say, oh yeah, it's because of the bigger sensor, or it's because of the lower base ISO, or because of the more megapixels, and we just fool ourselves into believing that it actually matters. And I think it's absolutely fine to get yourself a new piece of equipment from time to time, as long as it doesn't turn into an entire gear collection where you have so much that you cannot even use it all at the same time, or where the new equipment literally becomes the only way you can motivate yourself to even go out and shoot in the first place. And since we have now established why gear is a bit overrated, but also why people still perceive technical image quality to matter, let's talk about ways in which gear actually does matter. So first of all, for certain genres of photography, you need the right glass. And a wildlife photographer is never going to shoot on this DG Osmo Pocket with a 20mm full frame equivalent lens. They simply need the focal lengths like 400mm or 600mm to get close enough to their subject. Additionally, they shoot at super fast shutter speeds that often require ISOs as high as 12,800, where bigger sensors with a better high ISO performance make sense. And they are also the ones to benefit from super reliable autofocusing systems as the ones from Canon, Sony or Nikon to get the hit rates they need. And the next reason why I think that gear matters is at the same time also a relatively underrated one, I would argue. Because while it is the norm that people try to get a camera with the highest image quality, there is also a growing backlash against this type of photographer who wants to achieve the highest quality, because we want something that's a bit more natural, that's a bit more experience-based. For instance, there's many photographers who are shooting film again because it's just a bit more original, because it's something different, because the process is fun and maybe inspiring. Camera brands like Fujifilm and Leica have really excelled at building cameras that are experience-based, and they see a growing demand in their cameras because they offer something unique, they offer something different away from this path of perfect technical image quality and more towards a more experience-based type of photography. And experience is really here the key word, because Leica and Fujifilm have understood that they need to produce fun cameras, inspiring cameras that actually motivate people to go out and shoot. So I personally would argue that gear matters, because gear should inspire you to level up your game, inspire you to go out shoot in the first place, and also just inspire you to embrace and enjoy the process of actually taking photos. And I think that one of the key insights of the video is that it's not about the technical image quality, but it's mostly about your composition skills. It's about the way you read the light, and it's also about the way you edit. And if you want to learn how to take better photos, even when the light is absolutely boring, then I recommend you to check out this video up here, in which I basically tell you everything I know on how to shoot in low light. What is your opinion on technical image quality? Let me know in the comment section down below, and I hopefully see you in next week's video. Bye.